Hey ladies, how you doing? Justin here. So in today's training, I wanted to go over the dysfunctional menstrual cycle within PCOS because obviously infertility is a big problem for a lot of people with PCOS, and maybe it's been plaguing you for a long time. But there is a reason for why this is happening, okay? And we need to look at the underlying issues of this sort of abnormality that occurs within your menstrual cycle. So as you can see, there are definitely a couple different entry points for how the menstrual cycle gets dysfunctional. But we can be sure that a few things are typically happening here. Okay, so for starters, we can see that estrogen, right, from estrogen dominance perhaps, and insulin resistance, right, which is a major underpinning of PCOS pathology. They disrupt GnRH, right, gonadotropin releasing hormone, which is up at the hypothalamus, and it kind of interferes with the pulsatility, which is, causing a rise in luteinizing hormone right here, okay? So GnRH is stimulating the pituitary to make more luteinizing hormone relative to follicle stimulating hormone, FSH, right here on the left, okay? And this rise in luteinizing hormone is really the initial factor that's responsible for anovulation, okay? Now, also testosterone can also, really coexist as well alongside with elevations in estrogen and insulin. Not always, but it does happen, okay? And actually, in all reality, insulin resistance is truly the real reason why testosterone gets high anyway. So it becomes one vicious cycle. Insulin resistance causes high testosterone, and high testosterone causes, insulin resistance, okay? So basically, we can see this is going on in a lot of women in different combinations. So luteinizing hormone stimulates the theca cells, okay? So that's these blue dots right here. Those are, so right here, let me take a step back and say, this is the ovary, okay? These are the theca cells in blue, and the granulosa cells are these, is another layer of cells beneath that, and then the red is the follicle, which contains the ovum, or the egg, okay? So the theca cells are, they're responsible for converting cholesterol into testosterone, and then the FSH signals the granulosa cells in green to convert that testosterone into estrogen. So as you can see already, there is a relative higher amount of testosterone being made because of luteinizing hormone and not enough of testosterone being converted into estrogen. So you end up having a lower level of estrogen than you want, right? So, I know it sounds confusing because you're making less estrogen, but actually it's different from the exogenous xenoestrogens that might be in your body from plastics, the environment, things like that. So that's sort of the difference there. So less estrogen is made internally and you have more testosterone, okay? And because you don't make enough of estrogen, there's not enough to prompt the cells, the granulosa and theca cells, to make progesterone, because really what happens is you have to make enough estrogen first, and then that signals the brain, or the cells rather, to, okay, we need to make progesterone, right? Which is going on here. So this is exactly what's happening. You have testosterone being made, but it's not converted to estrogen. So you don't make enough estrogen, then therefore you can't make enough progesterone. There you go. Okay, so that's the deal there. So the follicles and the ovum start to mature, right? They get some sort of activity going, the gears are turning, but they don't ripen and they don't release. So they just, try to make as much estrogen as they can, and not enough, or not enough progesterone rather, too. So there's a lack of estrogen-induced negative feedback to the hypothalamus, right? And so it keeps sending the signal, and luteinizing hormone keeps coming out of the pituitary. So estrogen tries to build up the endometrium, right? This right here is the uterus, is the endometrial lining. The red is the endometrial cells, okay? So estrogen, as you know, is designed to cause the endometrial cells to proliferate. Right before ovulation, this happens, okay? So it's right in the follicular phase, okay? So estrogen tries to build up the endometrium, and endometrial cells try to proliferate just before ovulation, like I said. But because there's a shortage of estrogen, there's no endometrial buildup, and thus we have a deficiency of progesterone as well, like we just mentioned. So the egg doesn't release, right? Because like I said, you need to have enough progesterone to ovulate. And the endometrial cells don't differentiate either. And differentiation of these cells occurs after ovulation during the luteal phase, okay? And that's when you build blood vessels, and they start to corral a lot of nutrients to create a hospitable environment for any potential egg implantation, okay? So that's exactly what's happening here. And that's why you don't have a cycle, a menstrual cycle, because you're not building up the endometrium, okay, and you're not making a progesterone. So when this doesn't happen, we don't build up the endometrium before ovulation due to estrogen. These cells don't crank out progesterone, and then the egg doesn't eject, okay. So obviously, anovulation is not a thing for everybody. It's very, very common, and some people with PCOS do ovulate, of course, and they just have heavy flow. And that's still a problem too, and usually that's a problem due to estrogen, because you're making too much estrogen, or you have too much estrogen in your body, rather, I should say, and that's causing excess buildup, okay? Excess buildup in the endometrial lining, and then you shed spontaneously or a lot at one point, and you bleed a lot, okay? That's what's happening there. But another thing I want to quickly mention is that many don't have a period and are strictly anovulatory, but some think they are having a period. But really what they're experiencing is mid-cycle spotting or breakthrough bleeding, and it's not a real period, right? Because this is something you have to obviously discern for yourself and see if you are having symptoms of ovulation, right? Check your symptothermal method, check your cervical mucus, the cervix positioning, if it's higher, softer, harder to reach, right? You need to be really mindful of that if you aren't. Because if you aren't ovulating, that's an indication that those symptoms are not there. And so estrogen for a lot of people will start to slowly build up the endometrial lining, and there's no progesterone to stop it from building up and cause normal shedding, right? So what happens is people will start bleeding randomly because the estrogen builds up and then it spontaneously breaks, and there's no structural support to the endometrium, and that's what's happening. So really, so exactly my point here is that this can happen really at any point in your cycle. It'll usually happen for consecutive days, I think, right? Because if you bleed around your ovulation, then that's fine. That's like usually normal one day, but consecutive days is a sign of probably breakthrough bleeding or this mid-cycle spotting, okay? And you're not ovulating. It doesn't guarantee that you are. So you really need to check your symptoms of ovulation to see if that's true or not, okay? So that may not occur with everybody, but I'm just giving you a heads up there and giving you something to think about. Okay, so that's all I got there for the dysfunctional menstrual cycle in PCOS. So if you guys have any questions about this, if this is helpful or not, let me know. Thank you for tuning in. Catch you next time.